so interesting to hear from the former workers of Mayo. It is, in all, it's everything that was good and maybe not so good was brilliant. I'm very conscious that people are sitting down for a while. So, banana. I won't read the full poem, but I read the last verse. And Banana is written by Christopher O'Flynn, the author Christopher O'Flynn. Now FNT...
Look at mine to the head.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Banana was the title of the poetry book by Christopher O'Flynn. Scríobh sé Gaeilge agus scríobh sé Méarla. And he has this poem in English and in another publication, Aisling Rá Ann Tá Céine in Gaeilge. But this is Banana, so Julie, I'm reading this poem for you. And all those fruit lovers. But I think you'll get this now. Maybe I should read. Yeah. I might read. Accursed fruit, symbol now of gold and greed, prodding me into brooding on man's inhumanity to man. Why couldn't I, like our no-nonsense ancestor, the hairy ape, just peel and devour you? Why must I lose appetite and taste because I can think? O jaundiced, sickening, pulpy, bloody banana. And the context of the poem is that he links the picking of the banana with another hand far across the globe. And he thinks about who was of a ragged black-eyed Indian who picked the banana. So that link of how far the banana probably travelled. So he was a very good writer. He was what they call very independent of mind when he wrote. If I could see now the last line. His last 4 lines in the poem in Irish is Banana wi valti onsa de viaurish or locht mo huile o dagus lev the hachlum inish is olk. So it's the same poem. In English the poem was 4 verses of 7 lines. The construct of the poem in Irish is 7 verses of 4 lines. And that was Christopher O'Flynn. Now just very briefly I'll take you through other stuff. Pádraig Ó Conghaile, Traolach O Sport. In 1984 scríobh sé Sárchlufaí le Sár Imróí. Great games and great players. That was 1984, the commemoration of Uncle Maluclas Gael. We mentioned this man earlier on, Traolach O Conghaile. And he wrote poems. This one he has. I think it's a nice couple of lines. Again, Misha Era Ola, Mo Dilúte an Cáháin, Dúnaál, agus Fasta, Muinecháin. Créach nó Colum, Créach nó Tusa, Idirásach, Fáil nó Drehead, Éire, Ola, Ola, Éire. Tusa I dhia, rinne éon gon féide, os tú a háithí drúan díis, déan gon an bhíróid, mhór I díist. What he was saying there about Ulster and the unity, making one of 2, I suppose the 6 counties and the rest of Ireland. And he brought it back to, this is one I was very interested in seeing and kind of surprised me. Baha Feg Sayers. We've all heard the peg. And this was by Micheál Ó Conghaile, Mark the Peg. And I was surprised to see that because I would have imagined that it would have come through maybe some publisher in Munster. So I'm not sure how that came about. was there a Sean de Morga a Goberle FNT at some point, Liamy McNally. But that was very interesting. A lovely little book they did here, and I'd feckin' Bushats and Shinnacormick, Raftery and Filla by Inniu McNally. She's a teacher from up the Ballyhaunis area. And it's a lovely, concise little history of Raftery, the figure.
Didn't she do another one or two as well for FNT?
I say she probably could have. But that's a lovely tidy, and it's bilingual as well. It's in English at the back as well. But you don't know Nishtach the Nari. Do you know that song? Will you sing a verse of it? In almost Nishtach the Nari by Walk on one Sheila. It's the Favorite or Dorne Mayo. Over me my young is not a marie, go chasse me it's a Lord on the wheel. Big Lord from the Irish race with the is more like the East Shahos Ball. Go kite to Machrachid, Bunyan, it would be son, a Westport, go veil on a board. Well, it was more we made. So, very quickly now, I just want to give you this is Julie mentioned a Cardinal Tommaso Fee. I guess Shossi here are Inniu, the Banchwari Porrick the Barrel Shaw. I guess and Cardinal Hain. I was intending to hook she there shona imocht nearly. Now I always remember the bit I do remember when we learned about it was called the flight of the earls. No, second nearly. But I think the premise here was that it wasn't so much a flight as there was the intention was to return. It wasn't about deserting or tego. I have this book here, Leo, and Leo was a pen name for Anfarsha in a photo. And the reason this came in was because they were writing about the author of the song The Rising of the Moon. Oh, then tell me, Sean O'Farrell, tell me why you worry so. Hush, hush, listen. There you are. And he was from Longford. Now, how many? That's that one. And Kieran O'Neill himself wrote Amity. They were very funny people. And they were very funny, man, and lovely stories in it. One of the stories is about, you know, the power of speech. And, you know, some fellow was talking about the dog. If the dog could talk, what kind of a life would you have then? That was very funny, like, it's time to go for a walk now, take me out. The collar is too tight and he brought it back to it was very funny, and he wrote a book too on the life of the brother Eugen Zahor, Miles Nagapolline, so Kieran did that as well. There was two books I see, County Cormac and Shin, Jouts Midvrega on. That was Pádraig showing you now in Aachen. And what they liked about this was, in places here they kind of tried to print it near the canons. You know, that Aachen has a specific dialect. So I'm just going to read you 4 lines out of this because you'll get it. You know the way Irish people tell stories. We had Pádraig Geraghty in here earlier on, regaling you about all, and Julia, and you know the way we tell stories. So this one was about Gorda, or Rucher and Gorda. I'll only read about 5 lines. So they were going to a dance in Morani, and at that time it was all bikes. So anyway, somebody was without a bike, and this is the way it's put down here. The dúirt Kins go gahach sé go raibh sé imi le ban. Ach bhí samsa go dealt imán nach rá. Bhí sé 10 bliana ní sinne ná chuide lein. Agus bhí níos mó céile aige ná imach le ban agus 10 míle bóchar amach river. So the story of that there is about the lad. He was short of his bike, or somebody took his bike, and he said the other lads, they'd all wait. They'd never go home, back down, without them all. So if some fella met a colleague, they'd wait for him, and then they'd all go back. But anyway, this fella was out the bike, and they wanted to go home. So he went up, and he took a bike, and when he came back with the bike, they were amazed at the state of the bike. It was absolutely top drawer. And then one of the lads copped. It was the guard's bike. And the guard came down to them. He spotted it, and he brought him back up to the barracks. So the other lad went up and pleaded his case and said that his mother was waiting at home with the lamp on, and she'd go with her son, or something like that. So the story is anyhow they got going back. But it's the writing in it. It's the writing in it, and the turn of phrase. And another book, I don't know, do you remember this one? Traolach O Conghaile as Cosharige. So they were lovely books to have printed in Irish. I see they had a book here. This was actually a crease on seal. It was actually a religious studies book for Leaving Cert students, Australia. Another book written by Náisiúnta Conghaile here was Inniu, Edmund Rice, the founder of the Christian Brothers. So you get a flavour of what type of stuff was. And this one here, Agal of Náisiúnta, Agal of Náisiúnta. So, Húlum Fad Trocht or Tombo Coolinja. We all heard of the Bulla Cooley. But there's a whole other story then, which was, we'll call it Agal of Náisiúnta Inish. And the structure on that was a dialogue between Niamh Pádraig and members of the Fianna. And if Pádraig de Barra ag obair a sin. And there was two parts in this is only one of them, there's a Lauri Vredorish version. So that was very, I suppose, very specific or specialised type of scholarship. And the other one that Pádraig de Barra was involved with was Foilseacháin ed Éideann. And it's a sort of, it's bringing Sharon Katie's star or the history into modern day Irish that we can read. And it was a favoured history, as far as I know. I could be corrected on this, but it was a favoured history because it was the Irish historical story from the Irish perspective. On Scoláire Sharon Katie, and even in Raftery's poem Seanachas na Sketche, it would be a sort of a machalla or a continuation or of that. So you can see that some of the work that FNT, you picked it up there all night. FNT were very, very focused on Foilseacháin in Gaeilge, agus an rud a chuirsiad amach, an pápéir, Inniu, agus na leabhra. And even from all I've said there, I want to finish with one more now, and I'll finish then. You can nearly pick up the sort of themes that are going through it. It's very Irish, it's very rooted in its sense of Irishness. And I suppose, when you think of it, started in 1943, we were a young state. There was a lot of idealism. And we could do it a bit more again now. We'll say, agus má bhí lucht orthu, agus bhí lucht, bhí lucht, as I said here, the Mayo News wasn't what they were really interested in. But I want to finish with this little piece here. This is an English book written by Sean Defrania, and what it is, it's The Great Silence is, we believe, the first book in English which contains an extensive analysis of the decline of the Irish language in the 19th century. So this is a very comprehensive, he started out to write the book about immigration, but he actually ended up going into studying more of the decline of the language. Now, if you bear with me, if you don't mind, I think this is a nice piece, maybe. It's only one facet of what I was talking about. In the early years of the 20th century, Dr. Douglas Hyde was informed thus by Father Walter Conway, parish priest of Liamy, County Galway. When I was young, there was no house in which the rosary wasn't said every night of the year. When I came to this parish 8 or 9 years ago, this custom had been abandoned by most of the people. Whenever I asked why, the only answer I got was, "We can't say it in English, and the young people won't say it in Irish." The rosary is not the only thing which has been given up with the advent of English. Dr. Hyde also quotes the evidence of Traolach O Conghaile. "I have seen many mean and low things in my life, but nothing meaner or lower than to watch a household on their knees saying the rosary, the parents saying it with understanding and devotion in their own language, and the children which God bestowed upon them answering in a language unknown to the rest of the household, and which they themselves didn't know properly either. The children would frequently be tricking and belittling the old people." There was always a bit of trickery going on during the rosary. But that's a sample of what Sean Dufresne, when he went to examine the decline, and he had very, I won't read anymore, there was a very good piece about those that were extremely idealistic and wanted, they wanted Irish to succeed again. But you would have to agree, if it doesn't come, if it's not a consensus thing, or if a community doesn't feel it's necessary. So I'll finish with this little piece, and it gives you the richness of what's actually in the book. He was talking about the Irish. Those of us that love Irish really love it, and there are many people. But we are prone to falling into this mistake. And like many Christians of the 19th century, they made a virtue out of simple faith for fear of losing their cherished beliefs by risking them on a rational approach. Hence, they adopted the dogmatic line that a special language was always necessary for nationality, without giving a satisfactory explanation for the existence of the Belgians, the Swiss, the Americans, and others. So that was The Great Silent, and another book printed by FNT. So Tasulam Gurwan should sauce as just on made to be curta a glow, Nilishnach piece of Bidjach. Agus. Could be Maggie.
I was just checking to see who this Sean Dufresne was. And my father was a good friend of this man, God rest them both. And the excitement in the bus office when this was brought into the bus office the first time, and everyone looking for a copy of this book. This is Pádraig Shoya's Joe's with Breagon. And am I right in thinking that Micheál Joyce, who worked with he, was his son? Yeah, Micheál, he's postal Colleen as Rose Friel. He's married to Rose Friel, they're living in Dublin. Anybody else, before we finish, is there anybody else who would like to? Cormac, come on. Susan Shaw.
Well, okay. Garrity gave us a great illustration there of how clean and how clinical the conditions were in the Mayo News. But I was called in to have a look at it, was a Hamada party. Well, anyway, like I took looking into a bottle, but I mean, what struck me was the dirt of the place. Now, I was after coming out of pharmaceutical companies, where you were going around, you know yourself, and to go into this place, the filth of it. But the work was done, and I must say that tributes have been paid here tonight to the people who did that work. Absolutely fantastic under atrocious conditions. Julie, you played the blinder, and you weren't thanked for it. Okay, maybe you were entitled to £1, was it, or something like that, but anyway. But one thing I picked up there before the place closed, Nolbog, Traolach O Conghaile, right? Everybody had it at one stage. But the only difference between this one, which was in the Mayo News for years, I have a lovely signature on top of it. Kieran O'Neill, your good friend.
Oh, good man. Right. Thanks to everybody for all your contributions this evening. It was absolutely wonderful. There are some of us who are just fascinated with the whole publishing thing and just wanted to kind of put a marker down and pay tribute to the living and those gone before us in FNT and in the Mayo News and in Inniu and everything else. Because we grew up with it in town here. We grew up with it. You know, we breathed all that here. So we just want to say, Gurabila Mahagit to all those living and gone before us.
I grew up with coming in the door every week.
There, no. Thanks, Doctor, thanks. I hope you read it well.
But my mother read it better than I did at that age.
That's good.
Yeah.
John O'Callaghan.
Was there ever a history of FNT written?
Not that I know. Was there a history of FNT written? Not that anyone knows. No, there's bits and pieces.
No, the reason I asked...
There'd be a best history now tonight if somebody transcribes all this.
No, there's the Department of Irish Studies in the University of Galway, which I'm sure would be thrilled to hear even a snippet of the stories that were told tonight.
Yeah, Cian Fannach will sheet the storage and machine. Why aren't they out in the streets gathering the stories on these people? It might be a question to these people.
Tell them it'll be up on YouTube.
Yeah, it'll be up on YouTube, yeah, they can transcribe, yeah.
They're downgrading a lot of the departments.
Yeah.
A lot of the professors are not being replaced in UCG at the moment.
If there's a man who passed away last December, my cousin Flanagan O'Bera, on Spidgel, and if he was here, he would certainly answer that, and he would go on to that as well.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, Dudley, yeah, he would, on that very issue.